Hello, this is your semi-weekly reminder. Oregon, House Bill 2006, but it's recent, limits the sales of firearms to people over 21, or produces limits when you're under 21. Some restrictions may apply. See inside for details. House Bill 2007, again, it's this year, but it's called 2007. Concealed handguns limiting ordinances in public buildings and environments acceptable. That means you're going to have a local law. That's really all it's really about. Next, House Bill 2005, banning any gun that is called, not really, undetectable or unserialized or a ghost gun. A ghost gun is a de-serialized firearm. This has been established in 100 to 200 cases on a federal and state level. Every state says that a ghost gun is a gun that had a serial number you ground off. That's what it means. But people decided to lie and decide that if a gun never had a serial number, which was the majority of them before the 1800s finished up, and actually up till the 1930s in some cases, and actually till the 1960s, guns weren't required to have serial numbers. Good companies put them on, and they helped making it where you could trace it. You just had to know a little bit more about the gun. The serial numbers could be duplicated between guns. They just had to be from a different maker or whatever. But a serial number doesn't make anything traceable unless you find the gun. Anyway, this is the fourth attempt to backdoor a ban, as of 2023, making a firearm from scratch, because they stuck it in there. And because that flies in the face of state and other states and local rulings and federal rulings that say there's no restrictions on you making a firearm yourself, because all the laws are supposed to be based on commerce. They're supposed to be based on a person making a firearm specifically to sell it for retail purchase as a manufacturer of firearms, and they're already required to license. This is not to ban 80% lowers, it's to ban undetectable firearms. And then they don't define it. It's so poorly written. HB 2005 is bullshit. Now let's talk about Oregon, November 2022 Ballot Measure 14, Electric Boogaloo. Senate Bill 348 is trying to do an end around to a bunch of rules by implementing the Ballot Measure 114 rules individually, which can also be done and is perfectly acceptable, but it includes longer restrictions and more money for the state for a system they don't have the ability to implement. Again, I don't have a problem with the laws being passed, but you have to be able to get them through. Measure 114 only passed by a little over 1% margin, which makes it a law. Mostly due to cities who could just pass local-only ordinances, but wanted this to be in every part of the state for various reasons. And there's an April 1st current block from it taking effect. So Senate Bill 348 is there to just expedite it by just going through the standard legislative process. I'm in favor of the right of, by, and for the people to make a definitive or even a half-assed attempt at passing a law. No problem. But the reason it's being held up is based on whether or not, number one, it in effect makes it impossible to do certain things because there's no system in place. We have a system in place that could be used. I'm going to tell you how to implement 114 as far as the purchase permit. You just make it into a concealed weapons permit process. Just have them do the concealed weapons permit process. It allows for a concealed weapons permit owner to state, I don't have a gun yet, and just make that the purchase permit. Just combine them together, be done with it. You could just re-implement it that way. It would be a tiny change. It would get around all the rules, and it just says that it would be an automatic purchase permit, and a purchase permit is just a concealed weapons permit. In the city of Portland, Oregon, they decided to make a gun ownership permit out of it. If I wanted to own a firearm within city limits, it's not purchasing, just owning one, possessing one. I also had to have a concealed weapons permit because they didn't want anybody to open carry. Open carry is legal except in the city of Portland, Oregon. They didn't want open carry at the time. So they just made it to where, yeah, we'll just lower the cost for the concealed weapons permit, which was actually pretty high originally, and just make it a concealed weapons permit. It's the same set of requirements. Literally, it's just a concealed weapons permit, but it doesn't let you conceal. If they just use the concealed weapons permit and just use that as a purchase permit, as a rider onto the existing rules, it would accomplish the same thing for that part. As for the magazine max capacity ban, I don't really care about that. I'm into single shots. And if I want to fire more than one shot, I'll just make a cap and ball revolver that has no restrictions of any kind, no matter what they do. So let's move on. Oh yeah, that's not a ghost gun. None of this restricts you making a gun if you're not going to sell it, because you're not a manufacturer, you're a maker. DIY, do-it-yourself, homemade firearms are unregulated in most states. Even the Biden ATF 2023 final ruling, quote-unquote, only banned a full build kit if it's unserialized, not the separate parts if not serialized. And if you're not aware, virtually all parts sold, unless the company wants to have a huge problem with doing their warranties, because a lot of them give a warranty, they're almost all serialized. So this is kind of a moot point. So what did the gun build people do? They put serial numbers on the parts and sell them separately. They comply with the law, but maliciously separate them into separate parts you buy in a separate order from different companies. They just implemented a rule where they'll sell you the lower that's partial, but not the tools to do it. You can buy the trigger group, but not a lower at the same time. They just implemented a bunch of rules so you can't do it at the same moment. That's it. And again, nothing stops you from going to Lowe's and building a Lowe's bore, yeet cannon. Anyway, New York, New Jersey, Washington, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Virginia, and California, as of the lookup on some Verify webpage, I checked all of them. They're about the same numbers and same information. Those are states that require that you have to have some restrictions involved, but you can make a DIY firearm, but only if you follow a bunch of rules. But they don't allow you to. In effect, it's a de facto ban. And they missed that California had these rules in place and then decided to just encumber people anyway. And it didn't prevent people from keeping and bearing arms, again, if they were just cap and ball revolvers that can be much more powerful than your stupid 9. Or a shotgun loaded with a bunch of, for the heck of it, just load a shotgun shell with a bunch of 9mm bullets. It'll actually work just fine. Anyway, they all come out at once instead of one at a time. Next, the weapon of choice for violent criminals is a normal firearm, because unless they're convicted of a felony at the time while armed, it has no effect on the outcome. However, having a de-serialized firearm, and in some states, like I'm mentioning, a firearm without a serial number on it, is an instant felony. You go to prison. So they all make sure the guns are legit. They absolutely avoid what you're calling a ghost gun. And a ghost gun, again, is where you grind off the serial number. You alter it or grind it off. Making one from scratch and putting a serial number on it isn't illegal. There are very few people who actually have been found with a, quote, ghost gun anymore, because most people are not stupid enough to grind off the serial number. That's the actual meaning of it in every on-the-books law for ghost gun, if they ever mention it. And they started trying to rewrite that so they don't have to admit it. And again, most of the criminals literally won't carry a gun that has a serial number grind off, because that implies it's stolen. That's another complete felony, and it's a prison term. If you use it in a crime, it's an immediate prison term. However, possession of it isn't that big of a deal. But again, these are people who are going to commit a crime, and they don't want to be caught with a gun that has any legal restrictions on it. And again, most of these criminals are not in one of these states where they have extreme restrictions on firearms. A firearms charge easily makes it a federal crime, whatever you're doing. It goes from being, a petty robbery with a toy gun to a petty robbery with a toy gun is still a major crime, but you're not under federal restrictions and federal law bullshit all of a sudden, as long as you don't cross the state line. But the instant you you include a gun that's, well, number one, real, you're going to go way to jail or prison. But the other part is, if you grind off the serial number, that's just an unnecessary OG, a free ticket into jail, because no matter what, they got you for that. So virtually any criminal that handles a de-serialized firearm, which is what that is. That's what ghost gun means. Is an idiot, and I'm glad they go to prison because they're stupid, not because they're criminals, but because they're stupid criminals. So let's review. House Bill 2006 limits sales to people over 21 and over. Concealed handguns are limited in public buildings and environments due to city or local ordinances under House Bill 2007. It reaffirms the right of a local neighborhood to say, yeah, we don't want concealed weapons or open carry weapons unless you get a permit for it. You basically have to get a permit for that area. Doesn't matter if you like it. House Bill 2005 would ban, as a fourth attempt in 2023, de-serialized ghost guns by calling everything a ghost gun they don't like and claiming everything's an undetectable firearm when they're very detectable. Don't understand that. It doesn't. It's not about the plastic guns. It's not about 3D printers. It's literally them claiming that a homemade gun is undetectable, which doesn't make any damn sense. What kind of space age crap? Anyway, and then, of course, Ballot Measure 114 is still just barely passed. It is not a hard mandate, but it is by and for the people. And it's currently blocked from taking effect, so Senate Bill 348 is trying to just implement the same rules so it's not going to matter anymore. And honestly, getting a little over 50% of the population in the state to vote for it means that I'm not going to argue with the Senate Bill 348 being attempted. But again, unless it implements each piece separately, you're going to lose one part of that. And again, all they'd have to do is just take the concealed weapons permit rulings that are from some of the cities and just use that. Just use a concealed weapon permit. Just say, if you want to buy a firearm, you have to have a concealed weapons permit, and just lower the cost to like $25. I don't think anybody's going to complain if it's $25 stinking dollars and you take a training class like you would if you're going to have a concealed weapons permit in the city for it. But again, almost 100% of the population that voted for this are in a very narrow range of counties, and the map for it shows that the majority of the people in the state did not really vote for it. I mean, majority by service area. But we have a heavy population in certain cities, and they went for it. And they already have laws on the books concerning this. And again, none of these rules apply to a person making a firearm for their own personal use and not reselling it. And you don't have to have a permit to buy a gun if you're making one. And or you don't need a permit to buy parts for a gun. That's not a buy permit for anything other than a lower receiver. And if you make the lower receiver yourself, you don't have to do this. And these are not regulated in any other states, and they are not significantly used in firearms occurrences with bad guys, because bad guys generally choose completely normal, non-felony guns, because why would you choose a gun that's going to be a felony in and of itself? You could get off by some technicality, but the gun there. And the federal government will come after you immediately for that, because every gun crime is a federal crime as far as ATF and the government are concerned. So most criminals have figured out, don't take a gun that's against any kind of law. Take a completely conventional firearm, or just use a toy gun. I mean, even in the state of New York, you'll go to prison just as long for a toy gun, but at least you won't have the federal people coming after you as easily. And again, Biden only had a final ruling through the ATF banning a full kit to build a firearm that's unserialized. And again, most of the parts really are serialized. It's not the separate parts, and that has nothing to do with any of this. And again, DIY, homemade, crypto firearms are not ghost guns. A ghost gun is a de-serialized firearm with the freaking numbers ripped off. That's literally what it's made out as. Those are hard to trace just as much as serialized ones, because that really doesn't help you trace much. Unless you find the gun, you can't trace anything because there's no gun to trace. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.